The air in the Davis family kitchen that March morning in 2025 hung heavy, thick with the bitter tang of burnt coffee simmering in a scratched-up pot and the sticky sweetness of grape jelly. Olivia, age 6, had smeared across the table like a masterpiece, her tiny hands leaving purple streaks on a crumpled notebook she'd dug out of a junk drawer. Mike Davis stood by the sink, a chipped mug of cold coffee in his grip, his flannel shirt sagging over shoulders that bore more than the 40 years his driver's license claimed. A scruffy beard scratched at his jaw, a badge of sleepless nights spent staring at the popcorn ceiling of their suburban Chicago split level, insomnia replacing rest with endless loops of worry. His days were a grind. Rousing Haley for high school, tossing together a quick breakfast for Ethan, wiping up Olivia's messes, all before racing to his civil engineering job downtown, where blueprints of overpasses and sewer lines judged his every misstep. Haley, 16, slouched at the table, thumbs hammering her phone, her blonde bangs a shield against the morning chaos. Ethan, 10, stacked Lego bricks in a corner, his scuffed sneakers tracking dirt across the faded linoleum. It was a domestic mess Mike had grown to endure, even cherish in its predictability, until a crumpled envelope poking out of Emily's sleek leather purse shattered that comfort like a brick through a windshield. He'd been fishing for his car keys, already dreading the snarl of I-90 traffic and looming deadlines, when his fingers brushed the envelope. An oddity amid the jumble of keychains, crumpled receipts, and a designer lipstick Emily rarely wore at home, saving it for her shifts at the accounting firm. It slipped to the floor with a sly rustle, half open as if daring him to peek, and when he snatched it up, his eyes locked on a receipt that hit like a sucker punch. Midtown Inn, Chicago, one night, $189. Check-in. Saturday, 8:42 p.m. Check-out. Sunday, 11:15 a.m. The paper shook in his hands, the date, last weekend, branding itself into his brain. Emily had sworn she was at a tax seminar in Milwaukee, 2 hours from their quiet Elmwood Park neighborhood of cookie-cutter houses and nosy HOA types. They hadn't shared a hotel room since a sticky summer trip to Lake Michigan years back, when Haley still splashed in the shallows and sunburns painted them red. A memory now souring like milk left out too long. The cash payment detail screamed louder than the rest. Emily hated cash, called it old-school nonsense, always flashing her credit card with a smug flick of the wrist. His pulse thundered, a dull roar in his chest, and as he stuffed the receipt back with clumsy hands, his mind spiraled into visions he couldn't shake. Emily slipping into a downtown hotel, her poised figure vanishing behind a door, someone waiting in the shadows. Emily breezed into the kitchen right then, her heels clicking sharp on the tile, pencil skirt hugging her hips, hair pinned up tight like she'd stepped out of a magazine. She was stunning, always had been, her hazel eyes sparking with a fire he'd mistaken for devotion through 15 years of marriage. Her lips glossed just enough to hide the rush of her morning commute. Mike forced a blank face, grabbing the keys she tossed onto the counter with a distracted mumble about traffic, planting a quick kiss on Olivia's sticky forehead before trudging to the garage, each step heavy as lead. The old Ford Escape growled to life, its rumble filling the damp morning air, but it couldn't drown the buzz in his skull, a noise that swelled with every mile to work, echoing the receipt's date like a taunting refrain. That slip of paper haunted him, its edges slicing through every recent memory. Emily packing a duffel at midnight last Friday, her phone screen glowing as she typed in the dark, her Sunday return with a weariness that didn't match a dull seminar, her fidgety hands shoving clothes into the closet like she was burying evidence. At the office, blueprints blurred into scribbles under his unfocused stare, sweat soaking his collar as he gripped a pencil that wouldn't move. He couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Each line he tried to draw was a failed attempt to erase the image of Emily in a stranger's bed, with a faceless figure who'd already taken root in his nightmares. He got home as dusk painted the sky a gritty orange, filtering through cracked blinds while he threw together mac and cheese in the kitchen, hands shaky as he stirred the pot, the kids' noise, once a comfort, grating like static. Haley yelled about lost homework from her room, her voice bouncing down the hall. Ethan raced toy trucks into walls, scuffing the peeling paint. Olivia hummed a made-up tune, stacking spoons into a wobbly tower, her giggles clashing with the weight crushing Mike's chest. Emily rolled in after 8, purse slung over her shoulder, makeup fresh on a face that showed no trace of a day hunched over spreadsheets. She poured a glass of Merlot with a rehearsed calm, the clink of glass on bottle cutting through the air like a wrong note in a lullaby. Mike watched her from the stove, spoon in hand, the space between them thick with attention she either missed or played off with the same skill she'd used to lie about Milwaukee. Their eyes met for a split second, and he caught a flicker in hers. Guilt, maybe, or defiance. Gone as fast as it came, leaving a polished mask he couldn't stand anymore. That night, lying beside her in the sagging queen bed they'd shared for over a decade, her steady breathing mocked him like a silent jab. The receipt danced in his head, a puzzle with jagged pieces. Cash, a hotel, the coldness in her gaze when she'd come back, and as moonlight slipped through the blinds, spotlighting ceiling cracks he'd never fixed, his exhaustion hardened into a chilling rage, a vow whispered in the dark. He'd dig out her secret and make her pay with something sharper than words, something that'd scar her deep and permanent. Sleep dodged him, eyes locked on the ceiling as hours crawled by, each tick of the clock feeding a seed of revenge the receipt had planted. He replayed their 15 years, nights arguing over bills and school schedules, simple joys like that 4th of July barbecue when Haley took her first steps, now twisting in his mind like lies spray-painted over rot. The house itself turned against him, its walls heavy with memories mocking his blindness. A crooked frame with their wedding photo, the couch where they'd binged movies with the kids, the closet where she stashed her clothes with a care he'd never questioned until now. That discovery lit a fuse he couldn't snuff out, a crack widening by the hour, swallowing the stability he'd taken for granted like a shoddy house crumbling under its own weight. Next morning, as the kids ran through their routine, Haley hunting her backpack with a huff, Ethan spilling Cheerios, Mike mopped up with a damp rag, Olivia finger-painting with yogurt. He froze in the hallway, staring at Emily's purse dangling from the coat rack, its black leather glinting under a flickering bulb. She'd left early, her car peeling out with some flimsy excuse about a meeting, a lie hanging in the air like stale smoke. Once the school bus whisked the kids away, the house fell into a silence that buzzed in his ears like angry bees, and Mike approached the purse with slow, almost sacred steps, like nearing a sleeping beast that might snap awake. His hands shook as he unzipped it, reaching past the receipt still searing his memory, and pulled out something cold and solid. A cheap burner phone, its scratched case a stark contrast to the sleek iPhone she flaunted like a status symbol. He powered it on, pulse pounding in his temples, the dim screen flickering to life with a faint hum, revealing a blank gray background and a 4-digit PIN prompt glaring at him like a locked vault. He punched in dates with fumbling fingers, her birthday, his, the kids', each misquickening his breath until 1010, Ethan's birth month and day, clicked it open, the sound sharp in the empty house. The PIN's simplicity stabbed him, a cruel joke that she'd used their son's birth to guard her betrayal, a twist that churned his gut with nausea. The screen flooded with texts under a contact labeled Z, an initial that already gnawed at him. Miss you tonight? When's next time? You're my escape from this mess. Emily's replies cut deeper, each word a fresh gash. Work's killing me, but you keep me sane. You've no idea how much I need you. One, dated that hotel Saturday, was a raw confession that rocked him. Room booked, paid cash like you said, no one suspects a thing. Zach, Emily's boss, the slick guy in a tailored suit Mike had met at a company picnic 3 summers back, loomed as the face of his torment. His smug voice echoing from that day, oozing confidence as he'd clapped Mike's shoulder and quipped about the grind of raising 3 kids. Every detail of that meeting, Zach's easy laugh with Emily, his hand grazing hers over a cooler, replayed in Mike's head like a film he'd watched blind until the credits rolled. He sank onto the couch, the phone scorching his palms like a live wire, the living room a fake stage collapsing around him. Vacation snapshots from Wisconsin tacked to the wall, crayon scribbles pinned to the fridge with faded magnets. The gouge in the hallway trim from Ethan's scooter crash last year, once a fond memory, now bitter ash. 15 years with Emily, 3 kids, a mortgage chaining them to this leaky ranch house with a weed-choked backyard. And now this, a burner phone, a double life she'd spun with the same finesse he used drafting structural plans. His engineer's brain, wired to break down chaos into manageable bits. Kicked into overdrive, the puzzle snapping together with a clarity that stole his air. Confronting her would be a pointless blowout, all tears and denials she'd twist to make him the bad guy. He craved something sharper, a strike she wouldn't see coming, something to gut her like she'd gutted his trust without a flinch. He slid the phone back into her purse with surgical care, hands trembling not from fear but a fury hardening inside him like concrete. He waited out the day, stiff as a statue while the kids stormed back with their usual racket, their laughter ricocheting off walls as if nothing had shifted, their voices filling a void he felt widening in his ribs like a sinkhole. Emily strolled in past 9, her pricey perfume, a Christmas gift from him 2 years ago, back when he still bought her lines, hitting him like a sour wave, her face a mask of fatigue he didn't buy for a second. She poured another glass of wine, eyes dodging his with a precision that felt choreographed, and he watched from the kitchen, slicing bread with a knife that quivered in his grip, rage simmering like a storm ready to break. That night, as she slept beside him, her body lax in a peace he envied down to his bones, Mike stayed awake, Zach's texts looping in his skull like a broken record, each line hammering his resolve into steel. He wasn't the yelling type, not one to smash things. He built solutions, designed bridges to bear impossible loads, calculated stress points with machine-like cool. But now, in the dim glow of their bedroom, the clock ticking past 3, the house's stillness wrapping him like a chokehold, something new sparked. A plan, as exact as his work blueprints, not to build but to tear down. A revenge to strip Emily bare, leaving her raw amid the wreckage of her own deceit. The phone's proof locked him into a truth he couldn't dodge, a web of lies unfolding like a flawed schematic he had to fix with a surgeon's touch. The next few days were a robotic dance, a desperate stab at normal while his mind churned in the background, weaving a net of moves. He drove Haley to soccer practice Tuesdays and Thursdays, her gym bag thumping the back seat as she griped about her coach in a teenage drawl. Drilled Ethan on spelling words with forced patience, erasing mistakes with a pencil he snapped from pressing too hard. Tucked Olivia in with her stuffed bunny, voice cracking as he sang a lullaby his mom taught him decades ago, now a dirge for the man he'd been. Every act was a front, a curtain hiding a trap he engineered with the ruthlessness of a bridge builder. Each step measured like girders for a span meant to hold a crushing weight. Emily drifted through the house like a ghost, her motions polished, excuses thin as tissue. Endless client calls. Traffic was a nightmare on the loop, and Mike kept his mask tight, letting his anger stew, stoked by every glance at her purse on the rack, a taunt daring him to strike. He started with a decoy, a test of her betrayal's depth. He faked a letter from her firm, a $40,000 debt notice tied to a defaulted loan in his name, typed in the stiff jargon he'd picked up from years of contract reviews. He spent a night in the basement office, the hum of his laptop his only company while the kids slept upstairs, printing it on thick paper from a dusty box, aging it with coffee stains dried under a desk lamp until the edges looked worn. At dawn, he left it by the coffee maker where she couldn't miss it, black ink glaring like a warning in the pale light streaming through the window. When she saw it that morning, Mike staged a meltdown rehearsed in the bathroom mirror. Sweating buckets, pacing the kitchen, stammering about bankruptcy, foreclosure, losing the house they'd scraped to buy after years of pinching pennies, begging her with glassy eyes to help before the kids stumbled in and saw him unravel. She watched from the doorway, coffee mug still in hand, her hazel eyes sizing him up behind a flimsy veil of pity. He'd fallen for too long but now saw through like glass. She promised to figure something out in a hollow tone, lips pressed thin before grabbing her purse, the burner inside and clicking out, her heels a drum roll of retreat that cemented his gut feeling. She'd never save him, never had. Mike knew she'd run to Zach, and he proved it by cloning her burner to his laptop that night. A trick he'd learned from a geek forum years back for tracking lost site gear. He hooked it to a USB stashed in his desk, ran sketchy software he'd snagged during a sleepless binge, and soon texts flickered onto his screen like digital ghosts. "Mike's in deep. Can you spot me some cash?" Zach's reply pinged back fast, cocky as a king tossing scraps. "How much? I've always got your back." Mike let the lie fester like a weed, scattering more fake notices around. Foreclosure threats with forged bank logos he cribbed online. A house auction alert he mocked up on his laptop, tossing in dates and case numbers for authenticity. Placing them where they'd hit hard. On the dining table where Ethan did homework, by the TV where Haley watched her shows, even in the bathroom where Emily'd find them washing up, no dodging the panic. He watched her crack with each find, dark circles blooming under makeup that couldn't hide them. Her steps dragging when she got home, voice flat answering the kids, hands jittery around her wine glass, now a nightly crutch. She'd begged Zach for $15,000. The clone text showed. A sum wired to a dummy account Mike set up online under a fake name. A bait she swallowed blind, never guessing he pulled the strings from the dark like a puppet master. It wasn't just cash he wanted. It was proof she'd pick her lover over family. And she did, no hesitation, confirming every doubt that had kept him up since the receipt. Every night staring at the ceiling while she slept, oblivious to the hurricane brewing inside him. Days stretched into a week of silent chess, Emily barely holding it together, fingers tapping nervously at the table while he played perfect dad. Helping Haley with a biology project on ecosystems, gluing twigs to poster board. Building Lego forts with Ethan that Olivia toppled with squeals. Reading Olivia to sleep until her breath slowed, her small frame curled against him like a shield from the storm he'd unleashed. Inside, his plan was a toxin seeping everywhere. Eating away at Emily's image and driving him to the next move with a grit he didn't know he had until pain forged it. She had no clue he'd tapped the phone, that he'd rigged this crisis to test her loyalty and found it brittle as dry leaves, and that ignorance was his ace, a shield as he wove his revenge with an artisan's patience. The debt was a sham she'd bought whole, and as she lay beside him each night, her breath ragged with unspoken dread, a dark thrill grew in Mike's chest. Not the endgame, but the start of something bigger, a quiet demolition to leave her exposed, clueless that her every step was tracked with a predator's precision. He stretched the trap beyond the debt, targeting Zach next, the smug interloper who'd crashed his world like a thief too bold to care. He remembered him clear as day from that picnic, tall, brash, Rolex flashing in the July sun as he'd smirked about family life. A jab Mike had brushed off then but now burned like acid in his gut. He spent nights digging into Zach in the basement's dim glow, kids asleep upstairs. The whir of a box fan his only companion as he scoured LinkedIn profiles, Instagram posts, local business blogs hailing Zach as a hotshot accountant who'd climbed fast with charm and deal-closing swagger. The guy lived loud. Steak dinners at Gibson's in the Gold Coast, weekend jaunts to Vegas with a cruise straight out of a cologne ad, a sleek condo overlooking the Chicago River, and his ego was his weak spot, glaring in every selfie where he grinned like he was untouchable. A flaw Mike could crack like a bridge with a bad weld. He went subtle, crafting an anonymous email from a burner account he set up in 10 minutes at a dingy internet cafe off Pulaski Road, posing as a worried coworker who'd heard whispers. The message was a loaded gun. It accused Emily of playing Zach, bragging in the break room about using him to bankroll her loser husband. Attaching a fake text Mike whipped up in Notepad. Zach gives me what I need. Mike's clueless. So easy to work them both. He hit send at midnight, pulse steady, picturing Zach's face when it popped up at his desk, coffee splashing his mahogany finish as rage flared. Next day, he ordered a package from a sketchy online shop after hours of late-night scrolling. A knockoff watch with a plastic band and fake crystal, a cheap jab at Zach's flashy taste, and had it shipped to his office with a scrawled note in blue ink. Thanks for the cash, sucker. He paid cash at a corner store, the clerk too buried in his phone to care, keeping it off the grid, then waited, laptop humming in the basement each night. Emily's clone texts his front row ticket to the fallout. The implosion hit fast, a wildfire he'd sparked tearing through dry brush. Texts flooded his screen. Emily pleading with Zach in frantic bursts. Why won't you answer? We need to talk. It's a mix-up. His replies turning icy, sharp as broken glass. You think I'm dumb? Save your excuses. Then nothing. A silence that cut deeper than words, leaving her dangling on a fraying rope. Mike was at the stove when she dragged in that night, soaked from a sudden Chicago downpour, mascara streaking her face like black rivers, her purse thudding to the floor in the quiet house. He stirred spaghetti sauce with slow, deliberate turns, the kids giggling at cartoons in the den, their joy a stark clash with the wreck unfolding before him. She slumped into a chair, shaking under a defeat he'd engineered with blueprint precision, hands clutching the table like it'd keep her from sinking. He said nothing, letting the silence crush her like concrete, her gasps filling the air as he sprinkled oregano into the pot with a ritual calm. The days after were a slow-motion car crash he savored, watching her unravel from afar like an engineer eyeing a failing dam. Emily's shine faded. Heels swapped for scuffed flats she shuffled in, wine glasses left half-drunk, red pooling like spilled paint, her gaze drifting around the house like she'd lost something vital, a lifeline snapped by his hands. Mike doubled down on dad duty, a polished act he honed daily. Weekend trips to the park with ice cream from the truck by the swings. Haley always grabbing mint chip, Ethan chocolate, Olivia strawberry. Teaching Haley to rollerblade while Ethan trailed with a kite made from a grocery bag. Every kid grin built a wall between him and Emily, one she tried breaching with shaky touches he shrugged off. A hesitant hand on his arm as he scrubbed dishes. A stab at chatting about Olivia's birthday, he shut down with a nod and a weather pivot. Zach was gone, a phantom she couldn't summon, his number dead, his shadow erased, and Mike plotted the next hit. Not just her affair, but her pride, her footing, her grip, leaving her life a heap while he prepped to soar, wings he'd feathered since that receipt dropped. He'd opened a secret bank account weeks back, siphoning cash from their joint savings. $50 here, $100 there, small enough to slip past grocery bills and school fees. Late nights in the basement, fan buzzing like his restless breath, he hunted listings in Naperville or Aurora. Far enough from Chicago to ditch Emily's ghost and restart with Haley, Ethan, and Olivia. Options glowed on screen. A 2-bedroom with a deck over a creek. A ranch with a yard for Ethan's Lego empires. Scribbled in a locked notebook with neat rows plotting a future she'd never touch. The kids became his anchor, tethering him through the chaos he wove with a craftsman's patience. Haley in guitar lessons Saturdays, her punky teacher praising her knack as Mike nodded from the lobby, chords echoing when she strummed at home. Ethan at a STEM camp in a rundown rec center, tinkering with baking soda rockets, babbling details on the ride back. Olivia's bedtime tales stretched with pirates and witches, her bunny clutched tight as he stroked her hair, tenderness clashing with his cold scheme. Each moment was a brick in his new foundation, a bulwark against Emily's void, her clumsy bids to connect bouncing off his stone wall chill. One night, scrubbing dishes with scalding water as penance, Emily edged close, blouse wrinkled from an unexplained day, fingers brushing his shoulder like he might dissolve. Her hair hung loose, a strand across her face, and for a flash he saw the college girl who'd lured him to Chicago with big dreams. Now curdled by the phone, the receipt, the nights she'd spent with Zach while he minded the kids, swallowing her lies like a fool. He jerked away, face granite as he turned back to the sink, water drowning her hitched breath. She lingered a beat, a silhouette in the doorway, then sank into the couch, a broken shape he wouldn't mend. Weeks stretched taut, Emily fading. Clothes unirond, steps sluggish, eyes glassy from wine turned medicine. While Mike pushed his plan, each move a nail in their coffin. He signed a lease for a Naperville rental on a lunch break, a tidy place with white walls and a porch facing a playground, funded by his skimmed savings and Zach's $15,000, rerouted through Emily's desperation. Met a lawyer in a dive bar near Union Station, a grizzled guy with thick glasses who jotted divorce terms on a napkin. Full custody, assets split, bare-bones alimony. Done in a flash. The kids thrived under his care, their laughter-filling drives to Millennium Park, Haley chasing pigeons, Ethan skipping rocks, Olivia picking dandelions she stashed in jars. Emily felt it, her eyes trailing him like a lost mutt, but he was ice drifting off, his calm hiding a revenge current steering him to the endgame. A blow to bury her last shred and cut her loose forever. It hit on a Friday, Chicago's sky leaden with a brewing storm, kids sent to a buddy's house. A calculated clear for his finale. Emily sat in the den, half-empty wine bottle dripping red onto a thrift store tablecloth from better days. When Mike walked in, fake debt letters in one hand, a crumpled stack from his desk, the burner in the other, its scratched shell glinting like a war prize. He loomed over her, shadow stretching like an executioner, and laid it bare. The $40,000 debt was fiction, bait to test her loyalty, a hook she'd bitten by running to Zach instead of standing by him. Her eyes widened, wine sloshing as his words sank in like blades, her brain scrambling to grasp a betrayal she'd never seen coming. He didn't stop. He waved the phone, reciting every text he'd read, every honeyed word she'd sent Zach while he slept beside her, trusting like a chump. He detailed the hotel nights, the cash she'd slipped so slyly, the cloned promises he'd stolen from her device like a thief in the dark. Her face crumpled, mascara rivers down her cheeks, breaths short and ragged in the silence he let fester to drown her. He piled on Zach's fall, the rigged emails, the junk watch that smashed his ego, then admitted snagging the $15,000 she'd scored for him, blind to his game. He capped it. He was gone, taking the kids, leaving her in a house she'd lose, bags in the car, Naperville set, divorce rolling like a freight train. He walked out as rain hammered the windshield, driving to grab Haley, Ethan, and Olivia. The storm rinsing the past while the house faded to a whisper. Emily alone in her ruin, a shell amid a life he'd raised with an engineer's ruthlessness. In Naperville, fresh paint walls, Haley's mess sprawling the living room, Ethan and Olivia's shrieks bouncing in the yard. He found a brittle peace. Rain chased him that first night, drumming the windows like a new rhythm, but he unpacked steady, sticking Olivia's drawings on the fridge with bright magnets, hanging a kid's photo in the den, Emily's absence a dull ache fading daily. They settled quick. Haley strummed tunes, fingers surer each day. Ethan launched cardboard rockets, whooping in the yard. Olivia snuggled close at night, bunny in tow. They asked about Emily sometimes, small voices curious, when's mom coming? And he dodged soft. When she can, but we're good, right? They nodded, trusting, and he clung to that, his office grind, blueprints, meetings, black coffee. Grounding him as the $15,000 bought a fresh start. A bike for Ethan, music books for Haley, a swing set Olivia loved. Divorce papers signed in a sterile office near the Loop. Emily a no-show. Her signature mailed like she couldn't face him. Her loss inked official. Word trickled back through neighbors. Job tanked after firm drama. House foreclosed on real debts he hadn't faked. Wine-soaked nights in a rundown rental off Cicero. He pictured her. Hair dull, eyes blank, a husk, but felt no spite, just space, a gulf he'd crossed. His life was park giggles, scorched dinners the kids teased, a home buzzing with paint and promise. One night, Olivia asleep against him, her breaths a soft hum. He watched Naperville's lights from the porch. His revenge not her collapse but his rise. Solid, free, rebuilt from her ashes. Then the past hissed back, a plain envelope slipping among bills and junk mail one morning, its creased edge echoing that first receipt. He tore it open, hands shaky after months steady, finding a typed note, and signed, sharp as a razor. I know what you did. The $15,000 wasn't Zach's. You'll pay. Coffee stench mixed with cold sweat down his spine. His engineer brain spinning for answers. Who knew? Zach was toast, Emily a wreck, the kids clueless. The note was a new specter, a loose thread he'd missed. And as he locked it in a drawer, trembling, his perfect revenge cracked. Someone had spotted the flaw. Days turned paranoid, checking locks, glancing over his shoulder, eyeing every strange car in the subdivision. No hints, just a faceless foe lurking, biding time. Weeks later, dropping Ethan at STEM camp, a lanky guy in a gray coat cornered him in the lot, out of place in April's warmth. No name, just dark eyes boring through him, a line that froze him. The cash came from someone who doesn't forget. He melted into the cars before Mike could move, leaving a chilling truth. The $15,000 wasn't Zach's, but some deeper pockets, someone with reach and a grudge now hunting him. That night, kids asleep, he dug through Emily's clone texts on his laptop, finding a thread he'd skipped. Vague nods to an investor Zach roped into side projects. A dot he hadn't connected. His revenge had kicked a bigger nest, and the wasps were closing in, their drone keeping him up as rain lashed the windows. a sign his peace was paper-thin. Truth crashed in on a Tuesday, crawling home from work on a jammed I-88, an accident slowing the slog. A black SUV tailed him from the Naperville exit, tinted windows hiding the driver, a shadow in his mirror like a shark on the hunt. Mike gripped the wheel, pulse racing, weaving through streets to shake it, but it pinned him at a dead-end light, blocking him with surgical aim. Two guys stepped out, suits dark against the dusk, faces hard as stone. The tall one, from the lot, tapped his window till he rolled it down, cool air slicing in. No intro, just a gravel voice. Return the money, or the kids pay. An envelope dropped in his lap before they peeled off, leaving him quaking, engines still rumbling. Inside were photos: Haley leaving school, Ethan at camp, Olivia on the swings, snapped from angle screaming surveillance, each shot a gut punch. A typed note like the first, cut clear, $15,000, account X, 48 hours or we take them. He stumbled home, heart in his throat, checking corners while the kids played, their laughter mocking his dread. Sleep skipped him, mind a runaway train. Paying meant losing his safety net, not paying risked Haley, Ethan, Olivia in ways he couldn't gauge. His sweet revenge turned venom, a misstep underestimating Zach's ties, a pawn in a larger game. Next morning, he wired the $15,000 from his hidden account. Each click a slash to his pride, balance zeroed as sweat beaded his brow. The real cost hit that afternoon, park time with the kids, faking normal while scanning strangers. The SUV rolled up, parked distant, windows like eyes, and a figure emerged. Not the lot guy, but Emily, hair wild, face gaunt from months of ruin, hazel eyes blazing hate and victory. She shuffled close, frail but charged, and dropped a bomb that broke him. It wasn't just me, Mike. Zach worked for someone bigger and you took their money. They found me, cut a deal, your head for mine. They know where you are and they won't stop. Before he could grab her, she turned, climbed in, and the SUV vanished, leaving him rooted, kids oblivious in the distance, a chasm yawning beneath. Mike Davis aimed to crush Emily, but his revenge woke a giant, and faceless investor now stalking him, his family pawns on a board he didn't rule. Rain returned that night, pounding Naperville's windows, and as he held Olivia, her breath soft against him, he knew his rise was a mirage. Not free, not whole, just a man snared in a web he'd spun, paying the true price of his betrayal.